Alrighty, thank you everyone for joining us for this graduate student childcare panel. And I want to thank all of our guest speakers. We're so glad that you could make it, and also thank you so much for filling out the survey. We got a lot of responses, and I know that that information is going to be incredibly useful for the graduate school moving forward. So with that, I think what I'd like to do is go ahead and let our panelists introduce themselves, and I'm going to go ahead and also highlight them. But maybe Dr. Harries, if we could start with you.
Yeah, good evening, everybody, and thank you all for attending, and thank you, Alexander, for arranging this. I'm Peter Harries. I'm Dean of the Graduate School.
And Mike.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Giancola. I serve as the Assistant Vice Provost and Student Ombudsperson, and I'm also thankful to the GSA for coordinating tonight's event.
Dr. Wiley.
Hi, I'm Steve Wiley. I'm in the Department of Communication and the PhD program in Communication, Rhetoric, and Digital Media, and I'm also the liaison between the College of Humanities and Social Sciences and the Graduate School.
And Savita.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Really nice to see you all virtually. I serve as the Assistant Dean for Operations and Fiscal Affairs in the Graduate School. And I'm also on the task force that's looking into the childcare options for the graduate students.
So I think with that, Dr. Harries is going to say a few words, but I think after that, we're going to open up to questions and have this be an open forum. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks again. And, you know, I think one of the issues that has been of significant concern to especially a segment of the graduate population revolves around childcare issues. Back in the day, I don't know how many of you still remember her, but there was a vice president in student government who really played a major role in bringing this issue to the fore. And, you know, I want to acknowledge Meredith Spence-Bolio for her work at that time. And she arranged for various childcare options. One of those was at Meredith College and also another one. But unfortunately, as COVID has done with so many things, there was a major disruption in that. And I think now is a good time to start thinking and getting ideas and understanding the scope of the problem that graduate students are facing in the child care arena. And to that end, we have put together a task force. Many of the panelists on the call tonight, as well as members of GSA, such as the president, Devesh, and the VP, I'm going to get this wrong, but I'm going to say internal, Melissa. Wow, I got it right. That's great. Have been also playing a major role in trying to think about what can we do? What are the issues around it? And the task force contains, you know, all the way from students to people in the grad school, to legal counsel, to Mike Giancola, to Steve Wiley, and a bunch of people who have been thinking about this issue and trying to come up with a potential solution to it. Although, you know, I've got to say, it's not going to be easy. And I just think it's a great opportunity to hear from people tonight to get a sense as to, you know, what sort of questions you have, and also how you're viewing the issue and how we might be able to move forward. So rather than have me continue to talk on, I think it'd be good to hear from the people attending this and what sort of questions and concerns you might have. I think it'd be really helpful to the committee to hear directly from students.
Yes, please feel free to unmute.
Oh, thank you. I just want to ask a question before we start. I'm a second-year doctoral student in the Education Leadership Policy and Human Development department. The reason why I wanted to talk before we started, I am not a graduate student mother, and the reason why I'm here is I and one of my friends from my department, we are planning to conduct a study on graduate student mothers' pandemic experiences. So I just saw this as an opportunity to understand the context and the challenges. And the reason why I'm talking is I'm not a graduate student mother. Is my presence appropriate here? Do you feel comfortable, or can I stay?
I mean, I certainly think it'd be great to, to have someone look at those issues and to help inform us. So, I mean, I think I'm speaking for everyone here where we'd be grateful for any information that you can glean, and I would hope that you would share it with us, as you learn more about the issues.
We are in the planning process. We will soon be applying for the IRB. So maybe this can shape the interview questions or other things. So I find this helpful. And if it is okay for you, I would like to stay.
Yeah,
Thank
and-
you.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here as well. And I echo Dean Harry's that one of the challenges, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit as we continue the discussion, is truly understanding the scope of the issue, right? I mean, we certainly understand that childcare is an issue, but having a good handle on how many student parents we have, that's not data that we've been able to really put our fingers on right now. So I think your study might be pretty instrumental in terms of us understanding the scope of the issue. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I think with that, if folks feel comfortable, they're very welcome to unmute and ask questions. But also, if you feel more comfortable putting something in the chat, I'm happy to read that out for folks.
Hey, thank you for this, making this the meeting, because it's really helpful. I'm a mother of like 2 years old. She's with me now. So I would like to know because I've been looking out for some resources for childcare, and as Dr. Harris mentioned, that because of the COVID, there were options, I guess, for childcare for graduate student at NC State University, but because of the COVID, there's no more resources for us. I mean, it's very expensive, extremely expensive. And for us as a graduate, I mean, for myself, I mean, some of the graduates, they are working full-time job or, but for myself, I'm a graduate in a graduate assistantship where, I'm working 20 hours a week. I'm it's a good opportunity for me, like, to pray for my career and, future jobs. But, with the payment and affording childcare, because I wanted this opportunity. So it's really challenging to keep this opportunity and also like, find the childcare for my daughter, because it's very expensive and, it's a pain. Yeah, I just want to share like my thoughts regarding this. I worked with my department, with the head of my department in the College of Education, and they tried to share with me some resources, but again, there's no resources whatsoever. So
No,
I'm just hoping, yeah.
Yeah, Miriam, I certainly understand the issues that you're facing. I mean, I wish I had, the perfect answer for you that, okay, here is this opportunity, but, that's unfortunately something that we're facing is, not only the lack of options, but those options that are available are really beyond the reach of most graduate students, unless you have a partner or a spouse who, is, and so I think these are the sort of issues that we're trying to unearth and try to develop some sort of response to it, or, it's just, I mean, I'd love to say it's an easy problem to solve, but it's one of the most complicated that I've run into, just because of all the layers and dynamics associated with it, from, finding, if we were gonna, where could we do this, right? I mean, is there a place on campus? Is there, space is always an issue. Having young children and the liability associated with that, is another issue. And so, I mean, this is not something that we're going to solve in a semester, or, it's going to be a process, unfortunately, and I know that doesn't help you right now, but I just also don't want to mislead you and say that, oh, this is going to be an easy problem to solve. I don't know if anybody else from the committee wants to add anything, but.
Yeah, I'll just add, Miriam, again, thanks for sharing your experience. And I certainly look forward to hearing from other students as well. Dean Harry started at the outset and said that this was an issue that some grad students looked at some years ago, and that program at Meredith was one option. The other option was it was a for-profit business, but it was basically for drop-in services. So if you had class, say on a Tuesday night, so you only needed someone to watch your child for like 2 to 3 hours or something, and there was a discounted rate that was provided to students. Unfortunately, that business closed during pandemic, and I'm hopeful that places like that might start to pop back up again, and we'll continue to look and try to scan the community and see when that happens. But those were the two primary resources that we used to assist students prior to the pandemic. I have a couple other ideas and a couple other short-term options that are not meant to be the fix to the problem, but I'll hold those because I certainly want to hear more from students about your experiences and your ideas.
And I would just like to add another thing, Miriam. I think, part of this effort too is to build community among grad students who are parents. I mean, that's something that I think, is probably, we've seen examples, for instance, of like Facebook groups at certain universities that create a community of parents, because, trying to develop a support group like that, at least in the immediate future, is probably something that is doable.
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead, Miriam.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a great idea. When I looked up the description for today's meeting, and then I heard creating kind of, a group with all parents who have, children. So I guess we will be resources for each other as well. So I'm hoping that you can have some kind of short-term solutions for us as we are still struggling.
I think we want a long-term solution, but I do think we also need to think about what can we do for, the immediate needs that people have, and try to work something out.
Yeah, and to that point, and again, I want to be very clear when I make this recommendation. We're not just saying this is for students to figure out, but having that student organization, an organization that's focused on student parents, so that you can share resources, share ideas. We've seen examples at some other schools where sometimes student parents might even lend support to each other. So, for example, maybe a student has class Monday, Wednesday evenings, and another student has class Tuesday, Thursday, and they might be able to provide, alternating childcare. Those are some of the things that we've seen at other schools. So in a previous job here at NC State, I worked within student involvement, student affairs. And so any students that are interested in thinking about what it might look like to create a student parent organization, I'd love to meet with you. And it's quite easy actually to make that happen. And so that might be a way for us to also get a better idea of how many students we're talking about, because now there's a home and a place that students can congregate, even if it's only virtually, to share resources. So that's one takeaway for me. If students are interested, I'd love to meet with you and kind of help you get that organization up off the ground.
I was just gonna add that in our December meeting of the task force, we talked about a set of short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, and we're kind of halfway through the goals that we set. In the short term, we were talking about focusing on clarifying the resources that are available. There was some misleading information on some NC State web pages about what was available to graduate students, and we worked on kind of clearing that up, but also organizing this meeting was one of the steps we talked about. And then in the medium term, we said we were going to do a needs assessment, which is what Dean Harries and Mike Giancola have been referring to. And it sounds like that's also I don't see the person who spoke first here. Is she? Oh, there you are. How do you say your name? Is it Eche? So I think, that kind of survey would be helpful, but we've looked at, we've talked to some graduate school deans at other universities around the country who are working on this same challenge, and asked for their advice and their the methods they use to gather data. So I think that's probably our next focus, is to put together a comprehensive survey of needs so that we can identify the scale and the specific types of needs. Mike mentioned, shorter term way to address some of those needs would be to work on connecting graduate student parents to each other. I think we also talked about, once we have the needs assessment done, bringing that to our community of donors who support various aspects of student life at NC State, and making childcare one of the things that we invite them to help out with. And then longer term, we said that we would be looking at different models of childcare, and we recently had a presentation from a group of PhD students in psychology who presented a model to us, which involves bringing older adults, elderly folks, into to help with childcare in a center that kind of combines interactions with older people and children. So that's a little bit more longer term, thinking about different models that might work for the long term. But those are some of the goals that we set, and I just wanted to share that so you kind of know what we've been working on and what we're focusing on. Did I kill the conversation?
Apparently, Steve, you did.
Alexandra, did you say that you had asked those, had a list of questions before? Did you try to have, if so, we can probably get to those as well.
Absolutely. So we collected responses, and I would say many of these are more thoughts and concerns than pure questions. But if there are no questions, and I'll maybe leave us a bit of time for anybody who does want to ask a question. What we can do is we collected 28 responses from all of you and many who couldn't make it tonight, and they're all anonymous. So one thing that we can do is even go through those and talk through them, and maybe that can be an opportunity to really see at a larger scale how people are feeling and navigating this issue within NC State. But with that said, I'll maybe give a moment if anybody has a question that they'd like to broach. Alrighty. Well, I would say definitely feel free to post something in chat if you do think of something, and I am happy to. I'll have it pulled up so I can read, and also feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question and use the raise hand function. But I guess with that, let me go ahead and I will share my screen, and we can walk through some of the anonymous responses together. Alrighty. Is this visible for everyone?
Mhm.
Perfect. So again, thank you so much to everyone who contributed to the survey. I think this goes a long way as a starting point for thinking about the issues in front of us. And so our first question was, how many children do you have? And the majority of students indicated that responded to the survey indicated they had one child. 6 indicated 2, 5 indicated 3, 1 indicated 4. And in terms of the age ranges of those children, they were definitely skewed younger. I think by and large from like preteen and younger. And we can see that here are the age ranges. And then I'll go ahead and read out these questions because I do think that these distributions are quite interesting. So as a graduate student parent, I feel considered and supported by NC State University. And so on the blue side, we can see strongly agree, and this is across all of the questions in this chart. And on the purple, we can see strongly disagree. So we definitely have a strong right skew towards disagreement overall. As a graduate student parent, I feel considered and supported by my academic department. So at that more granular resolution, and we see more of an even skew to the data, if anything, slightly left. So maybe indicating that at the departmental level, there is, which I think potentially makes a lot of sense because that's who you're interacting with every single day. The next line of questions was, or prompts was, I feel that there should be more parenting resources available to graduate student parents. And that was disproportionately strongly agree and somewhat agree. And there was one strongly disagree, but I have a feeling that might have been accidental. I actively engage with other parents here at NC State University. So more of a right-leaning distribution, so more disagrees than agrees. If there were parenting groups at NC State University, I would actively engage with other graduate student parents through those groups. And we have no disagreement here, only neither nor and the somewhat agree and strongly agree. And then for the last prompt, we have, I feel that childcare options available through NC State University are reasonable and affordable, and skews right towards disagree. So maybe I'll stop there and ask if anybody has any thoughts or any questions about that before moving to some of the thoughts, concerns, and recommendations.
Alexander, this data kind of prompted a question for me. I wonder if I could pose one to some of the student parents that are on the call just to hear their experience. You know, and you know, this may not be appropriate for all classes and or all age ranges, so I want to be clear about that. But I was talking with some faculty about possible solutions, and one of the faculty members said that they make it clear to students in their class that if they had kids, they're more than welcome to bring them to class if that's appropriate, you know, for them. And so I guess I'm just curious to see students on the call that are parents. Has that ever been presented to you as an option by faculty, or have you ever requested such an accommodation? I'm just curious to see what response you received, you know, to that.
No, I mean, not for me.
That's never been offered. Okay.
Have any of you requested it and been turned down?
No.
And
I
again,
mean,
oh, go ahead,
I-
Miriam, I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. I thought someone else was trying to speak. That's why I muted myself. Actually, the thing for me, I always try to find online options for me, which is way better. Even though still with the online, I still need childcare because
Mhm.
she's around and it's hard to focus, but at least I have access to the resources. I have, some kind of help from the family member, like to, if I have, to focus on something, but it's a pain, even though it's online. But I did not ask like directly if I can bring her to class or not, to be honest. And no one ever mentioned that. I never in my department seen any, parents with or student with their kids entering classroom. So I'm just, that's my response.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think there could well be some reluctance to even consider it if you're not seeing it, right? So.
Right.
I
And-
feel like that poses a good like follow-up question, that if it was offered to you again as a student parent, would you want to take advantage of that? Because again, it's hard to focus on class, let alone also bringing your child to class. So obviously it's fair to say, no, I wouldn't be able to do that. I need to, give all my attention to class. I personally think it would be very difficult to bring your child to class and worry about, taking care of them and their needs and paying attention. So.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point, Melissa. And I throw it out because I don't think that's the answer, right? But in the short term, as we're thinking about trying to develop some longer term, it may be that it works for some students in some classes and in some circumstances, right? If you have a newborn, probably not going to work very well, or maybe it will, depending, right? But if they sleep during that time, but if you have a child that's a little bit older that maybe can be working on their homework. I know myself as a professor, I've had students bring. I don't teach currently, but I've had students bring children to class before, and it worked out fine. And a lot of that's just that communications piece. There are probably some disciplines where that would not work at all, right? So I don't throw that out as a silver bullet, quite the opposite, but it may be a short-term strategy that some students might consider if it would work for your family. I don't know, Peter, that I don't think we have a policy. Steve, you may know. I don't think there's any policy on the books for or against what I'm recommending. So I think it would really just be a conversation with the faculty member to say, hey, is this an option in your class? And what are some things that we might consider if in fact you would consider that. But the faculty member I was talking to said that they would be very open to it and would, and I said, well, would you ever consider putting that on your syllabi? And that was something they hadn't considered, and they were thinking about that. So again, I don't think this is the answer as much as just another option, if you will.
Mariella?
Yeah, hey, how are you? I'm glad to be here. I've never participated on this. I think I know you, right? Well, I just want to share a little of my experience here. I'm from Peru. I am a PhD student with my husband. It's also a MCS master student. I started first here, and when I came, I found a lot of I look for resources for childcare for my child, which was 2 years at that time, and it was very difficult. I couldn't find anything, so I bring also a family member here to help me with that. Then I found one nice resource, but then the pandemic came, and I couldn't send my child to a childcare because there is, I don't know if someone knows about that, but I want to share this. There is like a childcare subside for like residents or people who is in North Carolina. He's from the government, and I applied for that. I have a positive response, so I will just have to pay like 10% of that for childcare. Which was around $200, which will be affordable like for student. But of course, the pandemic came and I couldn't send my child to childcare, but that will be an option for somebody. Maybe as students, we qualify for that, I think.
How did you apply for that, Marielle?
I applied to Wake Human Resources. It's childcare subside. Yes.
Is that through Wake County, Mariella?
Yes. It's
Wake
from
County? Human
yes,
Res-
Wake County. I can send the link or the information. I tried to apply after, so this year also, with but my husband was here. So when I applied first, I applied just by myself because my husband wasn't here in US. He was abroad, so I applied just for me and I qualified for that. But then when my husband came, we have to like join our incomes, so we couldn't like get that resource because we were just like $80 more than the minimum requirement for that. Yeah, so but like just a little, but yeah, it's a resource for someone maybe alone.
Yeah, and I heard there's a long wait list on that. I heard about this program because I've been looking for many resources, but when I looked more into it and then I asked, an email, some questions, and they told me the wait list, it's like within 6 to 7 to 8 months to get into that.
Not
That's
really.
what they
The
told
first
me.
time I applied, I entered to the waiting list and I was there like less than a month. Then in another month, they reply and send me, okay, we have the space for you, okay. And then the second time was last year, yeah, like 3 months ago, I think. I also was just for 1 month in the waiting list.
And where did you, I mean, how close to the university was the facility where you brought your child?
Oh, that's a great thing that you have to choose a private childcare that we should be from 3 to 5 stars. So you can choose whatever, and you.
Oh, so you have the flexibility to choose wherever
Yes.
you. Okay.
Yeah, but those childcare have to be from 3 to 5 stars and have to accept the vouchers from the county.
Okay.
The one thing too, and Marielle, I'm so glad you brought this resource up. So thanks for
Yeah, I couldn't use.
For Alexander for putting it in the chat. The other thing I just want to make sure, especially for any international students that may be on the call, it'd be real important to make sure you check with OIS, the Office of International Scholars, just to make sure what resources you can access and not have it be a problem with your visa. Oftentimes government resources can have a negative impact on your visa status. Resources that the university provides, say through PAC Essentials, and I'll talk about that maybe a little bit later in the call, is not a problem. We've already cleared that through OIS, but anything that is a government resource, I just would always advise our international students to check with OIS first, because we don't want to do something in one hand to try to help you, but then have a negative impact. My hope is that it wouldn't become an issue, but I just didn't want anybody to be surprised by that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
But thanks again for sharing that resource, Marielle.
There's a comment in the chat from Momita saying that their application was denied. Momita, do you want to say, were you given a reason for the denial?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I am in the middle of something. I am outside, so maybe there will be some noise. So I'm a graduate student at Department of Forest Biomaterials. I'm actually a master's student, and my husband is a PhD student in the same department. Our child is 9 months old. So when he was 4 months old, we applied for the subsidy, but they denied because we are graduate students. They don't give subsidy for graduate students. That's the thing. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. I was looking at the website that Alexander shared on this county list, and it does talk about you are in school or in a job training program. So I'm not doubting you. I'm just curious about, you know, how they define that, and you know what in what sense graduate students were excluded.
I don't know. It was not written in their website. So we applied and they wanted the verification documents like our student ID card and proof of income and all of that. And at first they put us in waiting list. And then they denied our application saying that we don't give the subsidy for the graduate students.
And that's interesting because it seems to contradict Mariella's experience.
Yeah, what happened is that when the first time when I went for information to the human resources, they told me that I am a worker, like more than a student, because I have the assistantship. So they said I should apply as a worker, because the student status, I think, is for undergrads.
Yeah, we also mentioned that we are not undergraduate students, we are graduate students. And we applied 2 times. Second time, we written that we are in a work, as you say, but same thing happened, they denied our application.
So one action item here that I can take from the part of the discussion is, and I see that Amelia is on the call as well. Amelia and I work in Student Ombud Services, and specifically with the PAC Essentials program. And I just put the link in the chat for everyone. But this is a website that we use to make sure students are aware of resources around food, housing, and other financial resources. And this is where we used to list the childcare resources when they were available. So what Amelia and I will do is we'll reach out to Wake County, learn more about the program, the subsidy, and then make sure that that's adequately reflected on the PAC Essentials website. Let me give you an example too of there's a program, and again, this would be available for domestic students, unfortunately not for international students. So I want to be clear about that. But there's a program called SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And that's a government program. Well, what we found was that students were applying for that benefit. And it's basically a benefit that provides a card that you can use in grocery stores to purchase food. And what we found was that when students applied, their applications were denied automatically if they saw that the student lived on campus. Because the assumption that the government had was that all students living on campus had a meal plan. So part of what we try to do is educate them to understand that, well, no, in fact, only first-year students are required to have a meal plan. And we have a large number of students who live on campus that don't have meal plans. And so we work to get that policy changed. And so the same is true with childcare subsidy. If there are some assumptions that are being made at the county level, then we may be able to address those. Make sure that they understand that, for example, grad students aren't making large amounts of money. I'm sorry to open up a different can of worm, Peter, but in fact, that if that's the assumption that's being made. So in other words, Amelia and I will reach out, try to learn more about this subsidy program, make clear who may be eligible, whether again it would be undergraduate or graduate, and whether domestic students and or international students are available, and we'll try to work to address any assumptions or misconceptions that are there.
Yeah, Mike, I think also, whoops, sorry to interrupt you, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, we'll list that on the PAC Essentials website, so you can just give us a couple days and we'll try to get that information up there.
I think based on also what Mariella said is, you know, her eligibility changed once her husband was here. And I mean, so knowing what the sort of cutoff limits are.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
list that very, very clearly on the website to try to make it easier for students to navigate. Because one of the things that's important to us is that we don't want to send students down dead ends, if you will, right? So we want to make it very clear from the outset, here's who's eligible for this resource, who's eligible for this resource, so that you can, feasibly activate that if you meet those criteria. So we'll do a bit of homework on that. And Mariella, thanks again for bringing this to the group.
Yeah, I think that's not even clear for people from there, because I think that also depends of the assistant that review your case, because the assistant that reviewed my case the first time, she was aware of everything, also that I am an international student. Yeah, when she wants more information, she wanted more information, she asked it, and I was clear. But yeah, maybe in the case of the friend who was denied, yeah, maybe the person who see her case was like different point of view, right? Maybe there is more resources available from communities from each like kind of countries, or because, for example, in my case, I found some support from the Latin American community. Yes, they have some also events and some programs for childcare and other things in general. Maybe from other countries also have some special communities.
This is why we need a graduate student parent or a student parent association to share these kinds of bits of experience and knowledge that Mariella is sharing, and Momita and others. I think it's great that that we're able to do that. And so one of the things we can work on is figuring out how to make that more systematic and robust with broader participation.
And I just wanted to point to a comment that we have in chat. And I'm not sure if we'll be able to answer this or not, but it's from Ehsan. I have 3 children, and in total we're 5. I'm trying to get an apartment in ES Village, but for the 2-bedroom apartment, there's a rule that the occupancy limit is 4 people. Is it possible to change the rules or in any way?
Yeah, Ehsan, I would recommend, if you haven't already, and you can certainly list in the chat whether you've done this. I don't know if the fact that you've got the twin sons may make an impact because they're infants or something. If you haven't contacted University Housing and asked for maybe a special consideration, I would encourage you to do that. Katrina Pavlok is the director of assignments, and I can put her information in the chat if you've not already had that conversation.
Hi, I'm glad to join with you. Actually, I'm a spouse of Mumtaina Riza. Actually, she is the graduate student of biology. So we came here in fall 2021. It was a little bit late due to the pandemic for getting visa, as you know, all the things. So getting apartment in Raleigh is really difficult for the international students. And we are facing really a problem for getting housing, because last 2 years, the rent is going high. I don't know why. There may be some possible reasons, but the reality is the rent is really high now, because I'm staying in an apartment which is near about 1,000, and 2 years back it was like 600. So for graduate student, surviving with this high rent is getting difficult. So you are talking about long-term plan. So it would be better that the graduate student, if the graduate student can get the apartment easily, I don't know, there are maybe some way, but I'm talking about actually my personal problem. Like I have three children, which I'm facing challenges, especially with the expense and everything. So I was trying to also contact with Katrina Pavluk, and my wife advisor, Dr. Kara Giger. She also contact last year, but they are talking about the rules that they cannot allow 5 people, like they can allow 4 people, and they don't have also available apartment on that time. That was the main problem. So in this year, we are planning to contact with them. So actually, let's see what happens. And this is also a good idea to create a group. So all the graduate students and their children, they're facing the same problem. Like in this year, the Wake County, they opened a 3-year preschool. Maybe a lot of people don't know the information, though the seats are limited, but they started from this year. Maybe the seats are something like 100. So it is a good news for us, but yes, now my children are 3 years old, but I'm paying for the preschool now. So yes, there are the main 2 problems I'm facing regarding this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Also, rent of rally.
Sorry, go ahead, whoever was talking. Okay, well, one of the questions I wanted to ask is, has anybody else here faced a similar situation with housing? I mean, it's interesting because the rules with housing are a little weird, and it's not completely under our control, but like we can, I guess, I mean, if you talk to people higher up, they might be able to do something. But I was just curious, is this something that, because I certainly, I mean, I've had a friend who used to live in ES King and then decided to move out a couple of years ago because she felt that it was particularly inaccessible to students who were parents. So I was just curious, is that an experience that is like relatively common across people? Yeah, this just popped up into my mind because Ehsan started talking about housing as an issue. So.
Devesh, I can't obviously speak from the student experience, but it's been reported to me that ES King is oftentimes seen as a pretty good option for our student parents, notwithstanding the issue that Ishan had just presented with the occupancy issue. But because of the community there and student parents being able to help each other with childcare on site, and there's playground and other places where the kids can play and do those kinds of things. So the experiences that I've heard from students over the years is that ES King has been a favorable location for those students that do have children. Obviously, if others are on the call have a different experience, I would hope that they would speak if they felt comfortable, but that's just what I'm hearing from students.
I mean, that makes sense. That's what I thought too. But like this came up, I was thinking about that earlier, and that's why I brought it up. Yeah.
ES King as a side too tends to be a little bit more affordable than many of the other apartment complexes that are out there. Obviously, there's trade-offs, right? Because it doesn't have some of the amenities that some of the other apartment complexes have. But for those on a more fixed income, the ES King does, when you factor all that's included into that, does oftentimes come out cheaper than many of the other places that folks could stay. Now, the exception to that, of course, is I know there are some grad students that live maybe beyond the occupancy recommendation for the off-campus apartment, and so therefore they can get cheaper rents. But notwithstanding that issue, ES King tends to be on a market analysis. Do your own homework. Don't take that as a referral from me. But I think you'll find on analysis that ES King ends up being, I hate to say affordable because I don't think housing is affordable, but cheaper than some of the off-campus options. While there's a lull in conversation, and I don't, I certainly want folks to feel comfortable to speak up. So if you're contemplating whether you should do that, I encourage you to share your perspectives and experience and your questions and ideas. But while there's a lull, I did want to make sure that students were aware of one other resource. I just put in the chat the PAC Essentials website, so I would encourage students to check that out and see the variety of resources that are available. Again, there's not much there by way of childcare, but there are other resources that you might be able to benefit from. But, and I apologize because this resource is available for domestic students, unfortunately not for students that are here on visas. But any student that does receive financial aid from the university, if you have children, you can contact financial aid and ask to have childcare costs included in your cost of attendance. So let me be clear about what that means. It doesn't mean that what you owe the university goes up, but what it means is that when financial aid factors your financial aid award, they can now consider those additional costs. And so they can potentially provide more support. Now, in most cases, for graduate students, I want to be transparent, in most cases, that's going to be in terms of loans, but those loans oftentimes are going to be at rates far better than if you were to go to the bank to get a loan, because they're subsidized through the federal government. So again, for student parents that are not studying on visas, if you've not let financial aid know that you have children and childcare costs, please reach out to your financial aid counselor, let them know that, and then they can advise you if there additional aid might be available to support you.
Any other questions or concerns?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So how to contact with the financial aid counselor?
If I'll put in the chat, but again, if you're a student not studying on a visa, then you have a financial aid counselor based on your last name. And so again, in just a second, I'll look it up on the site and I'll put that in the chat. But you can also contact the Student Services Center, which is 515-NCSU. And any basic financial aid questions they can answer. And then if they can't, they'll connect you to the appropriate financial aid counselor, again, based on your last name. So give me a second and I'll put that information in the chat.
Okay.
Okay. Seems like our hour is almost up, Alexander. So I'm not sure that if there are no more questions, I want to thank everybody for taking part in this and for sharing with us your concerns and I think especially, finding some new resources that at least I didn't know about before. And I think, to me, it really makes me realize how important it is to create a group where there is people dealing with the same issues, where there can be a dialogue about, oh, I found this, and, oh, you might have found that. It seems like it's a big piece that's missing here. And, I think that's relatively low hanging fruit. And, I think certainly Mike put in the chat, if people want to create some sort of organization and, that organization could probably even have a rep to the GSA meetings and have a voice there as well. So I think, you know, that seems like a really positive way to move things forward, at least sort of in the short term.
Yeah, I was just about to say that there could definitely be there could be a special interest group that comes to the GSA and definitely lets us know about what they're going through and how we can advocate for them as well. So. If there's nothing-
Miriam, talking about what you stuck in the chat, I think a Facebook sort of group would be a start. I think Mike is talking about something a little bit more formal that would be recognized by the university as a specific student organization. And, you know, that also then, for instance, if you wanted to have an event for, you know, all the graduate school parents, you could petition to get some money for that. And so, I mean, it just creates a more structured, if you will, at least from the university's perspective, group. And with that come additional resources, at least to support the actions of the group. I'm not saying that it would supply childcare resources, but things to help, you know, build a cohesive group of student parents who could then, you know, I think help each other and help us in a lot of ways in terms of bringing things to light and also coming up with potential solutions.
I see. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, I think with that, our hour's up, but thank you to everybody who was able to attend, to everybody who was able to fill out the survey and contribute your voice. Hope you all have a great evening.
You too, Alexander. Thanks for
Thanks,
arranging
everyone.
this,
Take care.
putting it all together. Be well, everybody.
Thanks, Alex and Ben, for putting all this together. I mean, this is great. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, yeah.
Have a great one.
All right, have a good one.
Good evening, everyone.